watching his son takes the track in Porsches for the first time this season in this championship. So the session quickly underway. There is car 37 making its way through the Center S, which is Rafa Brocchi. And he makes his way down the outer curve of Sol and up towards the Descida de Lago. This double apex left-hander. Of course, Interlagos, the home of the Brazilian Grand Prix, and using plenty of the track on the exit there is Brocchi, but keeping himself quite firm. Now, looking back at the practice sessions earlier on, fastest time was set in practice this morning, earlier on, by the Jose Maranetto car. He was stepping up from Sprint Challenge into Carrera Cup, and he was 9th overall and quickest of the rookies. So strong pace for Jose. And he was talking after the weekend, saying it's a very different car from what he's used to. Easier in some aspects, more complicated in others, and it's better to turn quickly and to maintain the pace, but it starts to get challenging when you start to reach the limit. And he's more on and off than the other cars, which you can fight more. And it was good experience for him, and he was best of the rookies, even with Pipo right behind him. And he says nothing's guaranteed, but expectations are high. I should give credit to the PorscheSport.com website for those quotes on that side. Shout out to them for getting me up to speed. So the first few sessions getting underway. And the circuit will start to rubber in more. We have had sessions over the last couple of days with testing, with practice. But it will be a chance to see how the session plays out. Brocchi already has the top time in the session, 1 minute 40.982. Then it is Campos second quickest. Massa already third fastest at a 144.8. But these are the initial banker laps that you lay down. So these aren't really properly representative times. Once you start to get them really flying around in the first couple of laps, then you'll start to see who the proper benchmarks are going to be. Looking at Kim Sang-ho, who had that spin up at Ferradura. Makes his way flat out back down towards the Center S, back down the pit straight once more. And hard on the brakes. You can see off the racing line, there's still damp patches, especially right there on the outside of the Center S. That's going to be pretty tricky, but thankfully most of those damp patches and the saturation that's been on the circuit has been dried up enough. That hasn't been too much of an issue. There's number 16, which is that's 15, in fact, which is Leonardo Sanchez. But here is the young man everyone's talking about, Pipo Massa, in car number 19. Same number as his father, Felipe. He makes his way through that long arcing left-hander and back towards Junsao. All the way up the climb of the Subida dos Boxes. And then back towards turns 14 and 15. That flat-out run all the way back to the pit straight. And Pipo, even though being 16 years old, is not hanging around at all. He certainly is his father's son. Through the flat-out curve of turn 15. Down the pit straight, across the line he goes. And let's just see where the lap time puts him. It's the proper flying lap that he's had so far. He's coming 139.750. The best time so far has gone to Rafa Brocchi, 138.4. He is a tenth and a half quicker than the man who was fastest in practice this morning, which is number 45, Jose Maranetto, who was a graduate from last year's challenge category. And look at his efforts. That was the champion last year in that category. He was the champion 2024 in the Trophy Crown. Went to challenge and then quickly got up to Carrera Cup. So he's made quick moves in the last 2 seasons from all 3 steps of Carrera Cup Brasil. Their fastest at the on screen right now is Campos. And behind him is car 40 by the looks of it. Again, flat out down the pit straight. 45, in fact, is the car on screen. 45 in the rookie category is Jose Maranetto. So that is the man fast in practice this morning. making his way through the Center S, then the Curva de Sol. And then down the Retro Aposta, that long back straight before you hit the hard braking zone. Dessa de Lago turning his way through the left-hander. With Pipo Massa, headlights flashing in towards Center S. Just keeping tabs on where he is in the session at the moment. He's gone fastest, 137.916. So he's got into the 137s. He is fastest by more than 3.5 tenths from Rafa Brocchi. So Brocchi down to P2, and Neto not able to match his pace so far. And Neto did say that he was impressed to be fastest even with Pipo in the field. So it looks like he's a good run. And Pipo was doing some testing just a couple of weeks ago at Portimao in a Porsche. So certainly up to speed pretty quickly. Leonardo Sanchez has gone second fastest. So he's gone to 138.240. Just a fraction faster than Rafa Brocchi. He's on the screen now, going out of Pinheirino in towards one of the tightest corners in the circuit, which is Bica de Pato and Ductville. Back on the power, you then plunge downhill through the left-hander of Megullo. Use the curb on the exit, and then just through Junsao, flick it left, and then the climb all the way back up the hill towards the pit straight and the start-finish line. Brocchi at the moment is not on a faster time, but at the moment in sectors 1 and 2, it's the fastest first sector for Leonardo Sanchez in sector 1. Sector 2 has seen Pipo Massa faster so far. And Brocchi is on a good lap so far at the moment, across the line, stays 4th, doesn't improve. Bruno Campos has gone to 5th fastest and set the fastest final sector of anybody else. There's only just over 2.5 minutes left in the session, so only a short run to try and get the fastest time in qualifying. Massa could be about to start his first ever Porsche Cup Brasil race in class from pole position, provided no one else can better his time so far. Sanchez is on a better lap. He is the fastest in sector 1, personal best in sector 2, and now as he makes his way through Subida dos Boxes, through turns 14 and 15, foot to the floor towards the line, can he spoil the party and take fastest time? Over the line goes Sanchez, and with that lap time, it puts him still 3rd, but he did improve. He lost time in the final sector. He's on a 138.194. He was a 10th and a bit slower than Nieto, and he's now just under 3 tenths off the pole time set by Massa, who's going quicker still in sector 2. Personal best in the first sector, fastest second sector of anybody so far. As we look at Sanchez making his way back down towards Dessa de Lago at the end of the Retro Aposta. Sanchez in car 15, who was the endurance champion back in 2019 and the Brazilian endurance champion back in 2020. So he's quite well versed in long distance racing, but of course finding his feet over the last few seasons in the sprint category. Championship split into 2 parts. There is a sprint championship and an endurance championship. There's the big end of season race here at Interlagos that was the big endurance race, the 500 miles. There's 39, which is Luis Souza, raced in the sport class in Challenge last year. So he's another driver making a step up to Carrera Cup. Souza so far is currently sat at the moment in 11th position. Trying to improve on this lap, but can't quite manage it. Massa, I think, went faster still in that lap. He did a 137.906, so fractionally faster for Massa into the final 30 seconds of qualifying. Luis Souza did a personal best in sector 1 on that lap, but couldn't improve too much. And Massa going quicker even still. So whilst we're looking at this, I'm looking at the times, but Massa's going even faster. He's done a fastest first and second sector so far. He's going to go even quicker in this session. We've got Bruno Campos, who is currently there on screen in 6th quickest. But Massa's the one to watch. And Bruno Campos did a fastest final sector of anybody else last time, but he's got the fastest final sector speed. But Massa is on course to even better his time further. And fastest first sector they've gone to Sanchez. So Sanchez is responding. There's a real battle here for pole because Massa can hold on to it if he can keep this good time. Sanchez could steal it if he's even quicker in sector 2. Looking here at Luis Souza. Look to see where Pipo Massa is. He's come across the line and doesn't improve. He lost time in the final sector. And the second sector as well. And so too has Sanchez, even though it wasn't the fastest first sector of anybody else. He was only about 300ths quicker than Massa in that sector. Across the line will come 39 of Luis Souza. And will stay, moves up to 8th in fact. So he's also quickest of the Masters drivers. 8th fastest ahead of Edu Guedes. And then Paulo Sousa is 3rd fastest of the Masters from 45. And then the Sang-Ho Kim machine. Sanchez goes to 2nd quickest in that time. He's got a 1:37.982. He's only 76,000th of a second away from Massa. So the final effort for Sanchez put in P2. 2nd fastest of the rookie category. Impressive effort. We saw there Sang-Ho Kim coming across the line. It was a personal best in sector 1, but he couldn't improve his position either. So he is bottom of the rookies in 13th. So the checkered flag out on the session for the rookies in Porsche Carrera Cup. And Pipo Massa, in his first qualifying session in the championship on his debut weekend, definitely is his father's son. He is fastest. Pole position, 1:37.906. He is best of the rookies in the field, and he will be ahead of Leonardo Sanchez by 76/1000th of a second. The top 3, in fact, covered by less than 1/10 of a second, because Jose Maranetto, who was fastest in practice this morning, he did a 1:38.4. I think that's right. In fact, look at his times. Yeah, best 1:38.003. So 97,000ths off pole. So it is Massa quickest, Sanchez 2nd, then it's Neto 3rd, Brocchi 4th, Marco Pisani is 5th from Bruno Campos in 6th, Marco Billy is 7th fastest from Luis Souza, Edu Guedes and Wagner Pointes rounds off the top 10, ahead of Paulo Souza, Andrei Gedzinski and Sang-Ho Kim to round off the 13 runners in the rookie category. The sport category will be next, before we then get to our top Carrera Cup runners in that top class, and then we move into our top 10 shootouts. And by then, I should have been joined by your regular English voice on this stream, which is Mr. Jake Sanson. But Massa climbs out of the car, handshakes all round, and well deserved, because that is an amazing effort from Pipo in his first session in Porsches, and definitely lots of hugs and smiles all round, and no wonder. That's what he can do in his first session in a Porsche, in the championship as competitive as this. That will be mighty, mighty impressive. See, our Brazilian colleagues are already down there to have a chat to him, see what he thought. And if we do get audio, we'll at least let that play out in Brazilian, out of respect for our Brazilian colleagues. So next coming up in the session will be the sport category, as the green flag flies. And out they go for their qualifying segment of qualifying. Now this part of qualifying is another 12 minutes long. I was just seeing a few highlights, moments there from qualifying. And there is Felipe himself. Very proud parents, very proud father, I think, looking on. Thumbs up from Felipe. Wonder how he'd get on in a Porsche. Maybe the two of them should share a car in the Endurance Championship. There's an idea. If someone can get that idea to Felipe, I'm sure he'd more than happily take that up and race alongside his son. Of course, a fellow countryman and F1 racer, Rubens Barrichello, has done so. Let's see if Massa can follow the same trend. So, on to the sport category, where we've got quite a few drivers also stepping up from the trophy class and from challenge. If you look at who is in this competition, as one car's gone around already up at Desida de Lago, which is car 29, which is Rodrigo Melo, the 45-year-old who Started racing Porsches back in 2013. Started the Carrera Cup back in 18. And has scored 20 points last year in the championship. In terms of the drivers to watch out for here in this category, in the sport class, best driver of the field was Elso Feldman. And he'll be hoping to put in a good performance to match that in qualifying now. And he's the man on screen with car number 1. And there are 14 cars in sport class this weekend. And Feldman, when he was talking to the Porsche Sport website, said he only rode in the simulator during the summer, but when they were running yesterday, had a very unbalanced car. They managed to get it right for the rain that came out this morning, and having to adapt the setup again for the dry track, the dry conditions now. So changed the setup, and this has been a challenge for some of the drivers and the teams, because when you have mixable conditions like this, it's not always easy to do so. Drivers either prefer it fully wet or fully dry. When you've got to adapt the conditions for have a mixture of both, trying to find the sweet spot and the definitive line in the setup is so tricky. And only the most skilled drivers can really find the balance and enjoy those mixed conditions. But to have either fully wet or fully dry gives you a much better and clearer direction to go when it comes to sorting out the setup. There's Rodrigo Melo, who is now making his way through Desida del Lago without rotating his Porsche 992. And makes it through safely this time. So the first proper lap times will start to come in the next few moments, because everyone is out on their initial banker laps at this point. The Porsche Carrera Cup cars for this season are still using, I believe, the 992.1 specification. And these cars, part of arguably the most successful one-make series in the world. And these cars, in fact, are incredible pieces of kit. They're one of the most popular in the world as well. Of course, they've got that beautiful sounding flat 6 naturally aspirated boxer engine, water-cooled, 3.8 litres, some 450 brake horsepower underneath your right foot when you use these cars. At least in the challenge category you do. That's the 991s. And look at the info for the Cup cars, which would be much more appropriate. So 460 brake horsepower, 4 valves per cylinder, and they have a sequential multi-point fuel injection. It is quite a machine for anyone to behold. Paddle shift transmission, really impressive brakes, and of course the car's sitting on 18-inch wheels wrapped with Michelin tyres, and they really are a sight and sound to behold, particularly the sound. For me personally, there are very better sounding cars. I'm sure those watching in the chat in the English feed will agree. There's very rare better sounding cars than a Porsche Cup car, or indeed a Porsche GT car for that matter, because that flat 6 just has that magic engine note to it that just there's very few cars can match it. So this segment of qualifying continues on. On screen now we've got car 23, which is Leonardo Herman. As the lap times start to come in now on this second segment of qualifying for the sport category. And already the best time so far has gone to Gustavo Zanon in car 67, 1:39.021. Of course, this will give us a combined qualifying result, and then the top 10 of which will then go through to that final session. Already a new fastest time of the session total. Seba Malucelli has gone fastest in the number 31 machine, 1:37.6. That's only on his first flying lap, already 3/10 faster than Pipo Massa. Herman has gone to 5th quickest overall and 2nd in the sport class, the 1:38.204. He makes his way through the Senna S, through Curva de Sol. It's going to start to shine brightly now in this late February early March sunshine. Headlights flashing for car 22, which is the Carrera Sport car of Rajan Mascarello, who, looking at his session so far, has currently gone to around about 7th or 8th quickest. He is, in fact, in 10th. 10th quickest for him. There's car 80 on screen, which is Roman Zimkovic. And Roman is currently 5th in class, 13th overall on a 138.766. And Zimkovic raced in GT3 Cup Brasil between 2018 and 2020. Did the Dubai 24 hours in 22. He was the endurance sport champion in 2024. So a capable driver with plenty of experience. He's from João Pessoa in Paraíba, 46 years old. And the lap he's just put in has helped him stay 7th. Fastest time of the session has now gone to Leonardo Herman, now with a 137.166, just as I looked up to the top, because Christian Moore was quickest, 137.307, and Seba Malicelli set his best time that was 2,000 of a second slower. So literally a fraction slower than Moore has kept him in 2nd and 3rd. Israel Salman's gone 4th, so it's now sport drivers 1st to 4th, separated by totally 0.6 of a second. The top 3 are covered by 0.143, so less than a 10th and a half. And now you can make that top 4 covered by less than a 10th and a half, because Alceu Feldman has gone to 2nd quickest in car number 1, as we look on screen at 51, which is Israel Salman in this very pretty purple and yellow combination on the car. That's by Mamba. That's already one of my favourite looking cars in the field. There should be more purple race cars. I think anyone can agree. Purple on a race car just looks and fits right. So we need more purple race cars out there. And Israel Salman doing his bit. Through some of the Dosh boxes. And now onto the pit straight comes Seba Malicelli. He is currently on this lap at the moment. Fastest in sectors 1 and 2. He's fastest for speed, in fact, and goes top of the times. 137.030 on only his 4th lap of the session, his 3rd flying lap. Malicelli, best of the times so far, with 2 minutes 42 left in the session on my clock. Looking at 77, Francisco Horta, 11th fastest, 18th overall at the moment. Let's look at where he's doing on this lap time. Horta at the moment is on a personal best in sector 1, an okay sector 2. We'll see if he can improve a little more. There's also been improvements throughout the session for Leonardo Herman on his last lap to go 3rd fastest. Rodrigo Mello has gone to 5th, and Carlos Campos, best of the Masters drivers now, and in sport category at least, is into P6. Horta goes up to 8th with that lap, so the 77 machine into a 137.794. If we look at the time spread now between the cars that have set times so far in these first 2 sessions, right now it's mimicking, or starting to mimic, what happened in practice, because the top 11 are covered by less than a second. That is the fastest man, Seba Malicelli, right now, with 1 minute and 45 to go, all the way down to the 3rd fastest man in the rookie class, Jose Maranetto, 138.003. And I'm sure it will get even closer as the rest of this session plays out, and then we get into our fastest Carrera Cup competitors that will come up very shortly after this part of the session is complete. There's 9 cars in the Carrera Cup class this year, and some very, very quick drivers. And to give you an idea of the calibre of this championship, look back to last season. There were 5 different race winners in the first 5 races. That just shows you the calibre of how good these drivers are in Porsche Carrera Cup Brasil. It's probably one of the most competitive Carrera Cup championships out there in the world. You talk about the Mobile 1 Super Cup, you talk about particularly Carrera Cup Deutschland. Carrera Cup GB is also quite competitive, as are others around the world. But Carrera Cup Brasil has got lots of talented machine drivers and drivers that have come through and passed through this championship. So it's no wonder this has attracted a 78 car entry across both Carrera Cup and Sprint Challenge, just showing how popular the championship really is as it starts to reach its peak. In this championship, the two specs of car in the Carrera Cup, they all use the 992.1 spec. There has been the new 992.2 spec Carrera Cup car that was launched over the winter, and that I'm sure will make its debut at some point in the championship in the future. As we look at Alceo Feldman, who has crossed the line, and with that lap time has not improved. He stays third fastest. Top 8 is now locked out by the sport category cars. It is now Malicelli from Herman, from Feldman, from Moore, from now Lineu Perez, and the 888 car has moved up to P5. Also up to 7th is this man, Carlos Campos. 7th fastest overall and in the class, and he is 3/4 of a second off pole. There's some very tight margins. Just behind him, you've got Israel Salmon and Francisco Horta separated by 0.03 of a second. He's on a personal best in sector 1. And also going quickly at the moment is again Seba Malicelli, who is again setting fastest times in sectors 1 and 2, and again goes faster. And yes, there's a one he was about to, he pitted in. That lap had properly counted, he would have done a... Yeah, if he actually hadn't pitted, he would have gone even faster. And his ideal lap time is a 1:36.969 if you string all his bests together. That's both him and Leonardo Herman, who has the best overall ideal time right now, 1:36.8. If he'd done his best sets all together, would have done that. Francisco Horta goes up to third fastest. Personal bests in all 3 sectors, only 1/4 of a second off the top time. But the checker flag is out, which means that last effort does move him up quite high in the order. And anyone else that could be on a flyer at the moment? The last few drivers have already come through and taken the times, so it looks as though we won't be getting any major changes. But again, let's detail how close it is. It is still the top 12 cars now, separated by less than a second. Just showing how good this year's Porsche Carrera Cup Brasil and Sprint Challenge, well, let's see the times for them, really is going to be. Here comes 51 of Israel Salmon, and he also abandons his last lap because he isn't going to be going any faster. So Seba Malicelli puts himself in the prime position to get into the top 10 shootout if he's fast enough. 1:37.030, fastest in the sport category and fastest time of the session overall so far from Leonardo Herman in second quickest, Francisco Horta in third, Alceo Feldman fourth, Christian Moore in P5 to round off the top 5 overall now and in class. Then Lineu Perez, Rodrigo Melo, Carlos Campos, who's fastest now of the Masters drivers, and Israel Salmon in P9. And still P10 overall is the fastest rookie, Pipo Massa, who was ahead of Leonardo Sanchez, Jose Maranetto, Rafa Brocchi, and then in 5th in class for rookies was Marco Pisani. So our third category will see our arguably fastest drivers now on track, the 9 competitors who are in the Carrera Cup class. And that includes the defending Porsche Carrera Cup champion, Brazil champion, Marcel Muller, who was fastest overall this morning in practice. And he set the best time this morning ahead of Lucas Salles and Stella Bassani, who was third fastest in that category, from Alceo Feldman and then Mateus Comparato. And Stella Bassani, who's, I think, one to watch for in the championship. She has been quite a mover and shaker in Porsche Carrera Cup Brazil circles. And she, only 19 years old, but she steps up from the challenge. She was the Porsche Challenge champion in 2023, and the year before that was competing in TCR South America. So she's got an experience of both the front and rear wheel drive. And from last year in Challenge Cup, in her career in Challenge Cup, she has taken 7 wins, 3 poles in 24 races and 1 title. So I'm intrigued to see how she gets on, how hard she can push, considering that she managed to end the session third best overall. Alceo Feldman was 4th quickest, being top of the sport category. So she has a real chance of putting herself not just in the top 10, but even competing for pole position. But as we know, with how close it was in the times, given that the top 14 were covered by less than a second, even just a tenth can be the difference between putting yourself in the front 2 rows and putting yourself further back in the top 10. And it is the top 10, of course, that will go through to that shootout to decide who takes pole for the very first race of the Carrera Cup season here in Brazil. You're seeing some highlights here, slow-mo of a few drivers out in the session. That's Josimar Junior, who was not long competing a couple of weeks ago, as were a handful of drivers over in Portimao for the 6 hours of Portimao, part of the Winter Series GT racing that they have over there in Europe. There's also some Porsche racing going on in Southern Europe at the moment, in Spain. 12 minutes to decide who can pick their way through to the top 10 shootout. As we mentioned, Marcel Muller, who's defending Marcel Muller, who we're looking to try and improve that one. And in terms of the contenders to watch for here, definitely a few to watch out for in that sense. I should also correct myself, so forgive me for those who are probably screaming at me in the chat. It was Miguel Paludo who was champion last year. Marcel Muller was 3rd, so I apologise. That's a fault on me. I'm only human. And I have got ADHD, so I do actually forget these things a little more. So, enough vulnerability for me. Back to qualifying. And Marcel Muller, third in points last year, not the champion. Respect to Miguel Paludo for being the champion over Christian Parker. But earlier on, he was saying he was trying to focus on their work because free practice is not valid for points, but it is good to know that everything that they've changed and evolved in the car is working. And even in the wet, the car was competitive, and he was happy with how the car was braking to turn 1. So that could be an advantage for him, particularly. And that made the sector more difficult, but he's going to try to do well anyway. And they're ready to fight for poles and for victories. There is Marcel. Good pace so far in mixed conditions. Now it's fully dry. Can he go ahead and steal himself the fastest time in the session, or at the very least book himself into the top 10? I'd be very surprised if he doesn't. But of course, stranger things have happened in motorsport, and they usually do. So, Marcel Muller, the 2024 Cup champion. So he was a champion, just not last year. An ex-motocross GP rider, and he was also the GT3 Cup Brasil champion in 2019. So a 2-time Porsche champion, and looking to try and add another title to his string. There is the defending Cup champion from last year. He's done quite a lot of racing, but particularly when it comes to NASCAR. He's done ARCA East, he's done NASCAR Trucks, he's done GT World Challenge Europe, and also raced in Xfinity. So he's raced in the 2 of the 3 main steps in NASCAR outside of the top Cup Series. He also has records for poles and wins in this championship. In fact, there were 5 milestones that he took last year throughout 2025. I'll find them on my screen. He took, did take milestones last year. And last year he was the benchmark for consistency and for racecraft, and was able to win plenty of key races in changing conditions, and he closed the title under massive pressure. But he did it through resilience rather than dominance, and he had plenty of good race management across the season. There's 21, which is the Syngenta sponsored machine of Miguel Mariotti. Miguel, who has been promoted up from sport, was the challenge title winner ahead of Antonella Bassani in 2024. So there are 2 very high caliber challenge champions up to Carrera Cup this season. Is moving up the ranks from different classes to try and test their mettle. Some other drivers who are notable in this class, you've got Thiago Vivacqua, who has raced plenty of, I remember from the days racing in the International GT Open when he was racing one of the Teo Martin McLaren 720S GT3s and over in Europe, and he has also raced in TCR World Tour. He's done TCR South America and Stock Car Brazil. Very experienced driver for just being 29 years old, so not even 30 years old yet, but lots of experience under his belt racing in different categories. As Paludo makes his way out of Junsao and the climb up the hill once again to see what he can do. Another driver to watch out for is Matheus Comparato, who is 5th fastest in the top 5 at least in practice this morning. 19 years old from Sao Paulo, and he is a champion from F4 Brazil in 2024. Was runner-up the previous year, and also has competed for Brazil and represented them in the FIA Motorsport Games in the past as well. So lots of experience for him. Muller makes his way out of the City de Largo and onto a fast lap. And we'll see where these drivers stack up compared to their sport and rookie compatriots from throughout the session. So the first few lap times just being laid down. None of the pro drivers yet have put in the best time so far. For what it's worth, even though it's not a fully representative time properly yet, I'd argue, is Antela Bassani is best of the pro drivers that have actually set a time so far. She did a 1:41.273, but I'm certain that these guys are only just, and girls, are only doing just banker laps to get their tyres into the operating range they need to be, and then move forwards. So Muller right now is on a better lap time. No one yet is setting purple sectors. At the moment, it's still Alceo Feldman that has... Seba Manicelli has the fastest time from Herman, and then Francesca Horta. Feldman back down in 4th. There is Antela Bassani, one of the rapid young females coming up the ranks in Porsche racing. I'm sure if she continues her progress up the order, now she's in the absolute top class of Porsche racing in this country, I'm sure she will move forwards and move on to bigger and brighter things in the world of GT racing. I'd love to see that, and I'm certain, of course, she can do that. It will certainly be another fast female running up the ranks in motorsport. She makes her way out of Junsao. The first lap times coming in, Lucas Salles has done a 1:38.0 to go in there, and up into the top 10 has gone Jeff Gyasi. Bassani has done a 1:38.113, so she's only 15th fastest, but I imagine as we lay more rubber down, she's a second off the best time. I imagine that as she starts to really get more used to the rubber track, she'll be able to put in a bit more pace. Tiago Vivacqua, best of the Cup class cars, now into P6 overall on a 1:37.323. And that's now been beaten by Matheus Comparato. So the youngster, former F4 champion, up into 5th fastest now as we look at car 70 Lucas Salles. Here comes Marcel Muller, flashing the headlights through the City dos Boxes. And now back onto the pit straight. What can he do to put himself to the top of the times? Can he go to the top of the times? And the answer quite simply is yes, he can. What a lap, in fact. 1:36.627. Fastest by 0.4 of a second. Vivacqua has gone to 9th fastest. And there is still 2 and a bit minutes to go. And so some of these pro drivers want to be a little bit further up the order. They're going to have to get a shift on. Bassani has improved their time. Vivacqua goes to 2nd quickest and also breaks the 1:36 barrier. 1:36.844. So Muller from Vivacqua, then Manicelli fastest of the pro class. Comparato goes 3rd fastest across the line. Gyasi is in there. So the current top 10 at the moment is Muller, Vivacqua and Comparato from the Cup class. Manicelli, who's quickest of the sport category cars. Then Gyasi from Cup. And then it's Herman, Horta, Feldman, Moore and Pires is on the bubble in the top 10. But Salles and Bassani need to find a little more time if they can. Mariotti goes to P7 and pushes Pires out. Now it's Christian Moore's on the bubble. And we'll see if Salles and Bassani, who are on personal bests on this current lap at the moment, if they can go any quicker. Bassani making her way in towards Pico de Pato. Clear track around her. Distinctive blue, pink and white Mobil 1 sponsored Porsche in there. Salles goes 3rd quickest. So he's now moved up on a 1:36.844. Vivacqua goes P3 as well. Paludo has gone up to P2 straight away. So on his first proper flying lap out of the session, he goes up to second quickest. It now puts Francisco Horta on the bubble. He might be elbowed out of the top 10 shootout. Headlights flashing for Bassani. What can she do to move us up into the top 10? Currently 14th. Can she better 1:37.6? Yes, she can. 1:37.0. Finds 0.6 of a second and puts herself into the top 10. Here comes Vivacqua, looking to improve even further. He's on a 1:36.8. Can he go even faster this time across the line? The answer is no. And the gap between the top three is 0.2 of a second so far. 1:36.6 to 1:36.8. And second and third, Paludo and Vivacqua covered by only 19 thousandths of a second as the session starts to tick down. There's only a matter of seconds left in it. And in terms of speed, Muller isn't going any quicker in this session anyway. He'll come across the line and see if he can at least do something to better his time, but he won't better to 1:36.8. No, 1:40.8. He backed off in that session, so no change for him. There is a fastest final sector on their last lap from Mathias Comparato, but they have already pitted. So it seems as though our top 10 appears to be set. And it is top times from Marcel Muller with one of his only proper flying laps of the session that put himself quickest. So translating that pace from this morning in the mixed conditions into the dry. And one final left from Jeff Gyasi to see if he can do any better. He's not on a personal best on this lap anyway, and comes across the line and finishes in 7th. And Bassani also crossed the line and stays 8th. So the top 10 progressing drivers are Marcel Muller, then Miguel Paludo, then Thiago Vivacqua, then Lucas Salles, and then it's Mathias Comparato, who's anyway in P5. And they're also going to be joined by Seba Maricelli, who's best of the sport category cars, then Jeff Gyasi in Cup class, also Antonella Bassani with an effort that put her into 8th quickest, then Leonardo Herman, and Miguel Mariotti is the final driver to make it through into the top 10. The likes of Francisco Horta and Seth Feldman, Christian Moore, Rene Perez and co are all missing the cut. Also, cup drivers that are missing the cut as well. Pietro Fantin couldn't improve on 16th, even though they're coming across the line now. And no improvement. There's also a change for Mariotti on his last lap of the session, puts himself into P6. So stays in the top 10, but pushes Maricelli down to 7th fastest. Fantin misses the cut in 15th overall, correct myself. And Marcos Regadas also misses out as well. So 2 cup drivers outside of the top 10. The 2 cup drivers that did make it through with Seba Maricelli and Leonardo Herman. So congratulations to them for making such a strong effort in qualifying. If we look at this time spread, as we see some slow-mo highlights of that segment of qualifying. And the time spread, incredibly, is the top 16 drivers from fastest man Marcel Muller all the way down to Pietro Fantin, who is 15th quickest. Top 15 are covered by less than a second, which is pretty extraordinary. In terms of if you look at all the drivers that set times in the 1:37s, you have that is between Seba Maricelli and Jose Maria Maranetto. So that is between about 5th and 27th. That's 17 drivers from 5th down to 7th down to 20. But 15 drivers separated from 7th to 22nd by a second in that segment. And then we had how many different drivers into the 1:36s? We had 6 drivers in the 1:36s, and they were covered by about a quarter of a second. The biggest margin was the fact that Muller was 0.2 clear of everybody else, but you saw Paludo, Vivacqua, Salles, Comparato, and Mariotti all on 1:36.8, which is pretty extraordinary, showing how close and competitive it really is. Of course, yes, it's a one-make series. Yes, you've got some very quick drivers in here, and yes, it's obviously quite a long circuit being Interlagos. The Interlagos circuit, the Autódromo José Carlos Pache. Just to remind you, is 4.3 kilometers in length, 2.678 miles, very tight and technical section in the infield, long, fast sweeping corners, a very different circuit on two different sections. The faster part when you come out of Junsao all the way around to Villa dos Boxes, curving around towards the pit straight, then through Sena S, Curva de Sol, Retro Aposta, then the Cida de Lago. So then when you get to that technical section, uphill, and all the way winding your way through the infield of Ferradura, Laranjinha, Esse, Pinheirinho, Bica de Pato, and then and then just out of Junsao, you see two different characteristics of the cars here. That was second down to sixth. How really competitive and strong this championship is. So a credit to the Porsche Carrera Cup Brasil and everyone involved for not just having a car that plenty of drivers can find on the limit, but also so many drivers can drive so quickly and be so evenly matched. To give you an idea just how close it was, so Marcel Muller's time was a 1:36.627. If you look at Miguel Paludo's time, which was second quickest, 1:36.825, you then go down to sixth quickest overall, Miguel Mariotti, which was a 1:36.88. So 600ths of a second covered second down to sixth. But it was 2/10 off the top time set by Marcel Muller. So the timing screen's now been reset, which means we now get the last 10 minutes of this part of qualifying, which will take us into the top 10 shootout to decide the top 10 spots for race number 1, and ultimately who will grab the very first Porsche Carrera Cup Brasil pole position of 2026 in Porsche Cup C6 bank for this season here at Interlagos. You can see on screen some of our slow motion highlights. And one thing which is definitely clear in this championship, they know how to put together a good paint scheme on these cars. The Porsche Carrera Cup 992.1 definitely complements a very good paint scheme, and they know how to create a colourful one in such a colourful country like Brazil. And so everyone pulls out the stops to make sure their cars look as exquisite as possible. And you certainly can't miss them. So the top 10 shootout ready to go. There's Thiago Vivacqua, one of the drivers that made it into the top 10 shootout in that top 6. Only about roughly half a second or so. If you take out the exception of Marcel Muller, who was 2/10 quicker than everybody else, there's only really about 3 or 4 tenths at best, most that cover the rest of the top 10. So it's pretty impressive to see how close it really was across the entire session. And it's quite smart that they allow the 3 categories to qualify within themselves rather than having such a busy track. Because if you think about it, 37 992 Carrera Cup cars trying to squeeze around Interlagos at once during qualifying, you're going to encounter a lot of traffic. So being able to segment them out means that they get much more of a fairer crack at scoring a fastest time. And we can still mention the fact that Pipo Massa was fastest of the rookies. So he'll be looking to try and impress in the session a little later on. And just getting ready now for this top 10 shootout. Cars making their way down to the end of the pit lane. You can see the impressive drone shots. They do know how to put together a good drone shot in Brazil. They've been doing it with Stock Car Brazil, and they do it again here with Carrera Cup Brazil. There's some fantastic shots now that we have the ability to give you drone cameras that can follow the action. I've seen it in Stock Car Brazil. I've also seen it in the GT World Challenge Europe Championship as well. They have some really fascinating drone shots that give you a really unique, almost video game-like view of the action that you never used to really see before. Green flag back on the circuit, so our top 10 runners back out. And there's not that much of the session, only about 7 minutes, so you only get, at best, a couple of flying laps to determine who can really find that one lap magic and score the fastest time and take pole position. So I think one car which is being held at the end of the pit lane, which is Miguel Paludo, but for reasons I'm not quite sure why. Now, I'm not going to suggest he's missed the cut, but admittedly being new to the championship, he's just being allowed to just take a bit more time. Or whether he was late to the end of the pit lane, so he has to go a little bit later than anybody else. So a reminder of the top 10 runners in this shootout. In no particular order, Seba Maricelli was first of the cars out on track. Then it's Matheus Comparato, Lucas Salles, Miguel Mariotti, Marcel Muller, who was fastest overall with that 136.6. Thiago Vivacqua, Antonio Bassani, Leonardo Herman, and Jeff Giassi, and when they can let him out, Miguel Paludo. Those are the top 10 runners who will be gunning for the fastest time. And so here, everyone's just... I think they're all trying to find that one piece of real estate. No one really wants to go first. They want to kind of find that little bit of own real estate, their own piece of clear track, sort of backing off and backing up a little bit to try and find a space. The intriguing thing is, though, that Miguel Paludo, I haven't seen him pop up on the timing screen yet, which I don't know if that means that he's either missed the cut or he has had something happen and he was too late getting out of the pit lane. But he hasn't gone out on track because he hasn't appeared on the timing screen. The top 9 have. But where is Miguel Paludo? Ah, there he is. He's been let out now. He's now popped up on the screen. So his first lap or so, given they've only got 5 minutes in the session, it does mean that Paludo has less time to get this lap time done, and that's going to put him under a little more pressure as the first few runners in the session work their way out of the CNRS through Curva de Sol, weaving from side to side just to put some more heat and pressure into those Michelin slicks. There goes Antonio Bassani. And Paludo is still at the end of the pit lane. I thought he'd been let out, but because he's popped up on the screen, but still hasn't been allowed to get out on circuit. And that's concerning because either he's missed the cut or for some reason he's not being allowed out on circuit. And that's intriguing. Is Miguel Paludo, the defending Cup champion, not going to be allowed out on circuit to set a time? Well, that's a talking point before race 1 later on this afternoon. If that's the case, because the number 7 Porsche is still at the end of the pit lane. He still hasn't been let out, and the rest of the session continues. And there's only 3.5 minutes to go. So even if Paludo was going to get out there, he's going to have very limited time to set what will be a proper representative lap time, and he might well not even get a chance to do that at all. We're looking at Antonio Bassani. First couple of banker laps are coming in, but now everyone's starting to wind themselves up now for a proper lap. They're only going to get really time for 2 flying laps here, if possibly 3 at a squeeze, depending on when they come across the line. The likes of Maricelli, Herman, Bassani, Marotti, and others might well get enough time to get around and score another lap. A 3rd lap if they manage to do so. But this is make or break time. And I think that Paludo was too late coming out of the garage, and he hasn't been allowed to take his place in the top 10 session, because the number 7 Porsche is sat at the end of the pit lane excruciatingly and is not being allowed out. Well, that's a story I'm sure we can take up with Jake Sanson when he comes in and joins me in a while. So sectors coming in. The best first sector so far is coming from Seba Maricelli so far on their flying lap. And the first times coming in is at a 136.4 for Seba Maricelli. What a lap that is. That's quicker than even the lap that was managed by Marcel Muller in the Cup part of the session earlier on, just now. So a very fast timing for Maricelli, which might well put him in frame for pole position. Here comes Matheus Comparato. He has done personal best in sectors 1 and 2. Salles goes second quickest on a 38.6. Comparato comes through, only really manages a 138.8. Here comes Muller, headlights flashing, and he has gone fastest in sectors 1 and 2. So the man who's fastest in practice, man who's fastest in the first part of Cup qualifying. Can he go top of the times? Oh, you bet he can. 135.868. Even faster for Marcel Muller. as the circuit gets even drier and quicker. Marcel Muller won 35.868. He is clear on provisional pole right now by over 0.6 of a second. That is extraordinary. An absolutely barnstorming lap from Marcel Muller. He may have been third in the championship last year, but he is going for the title straight from day one. Here comes the 31 machine. This is Seba Malicelli, who is not faster in sectors 1 and 2 yet. Lots of personal bests coming in, and I think faster again in the first sector has gone Marcel Muller. So not content with his best time in sector 1 on that lap, he's going faster still on this lap. Here comes Malicelli. He will not go faster because he isn't setting personal best. No, 1:39.392, and he will get time for one more lap. If you cross the line before the timer hits 0, you are allowed to start your one more lap if you can. He might well have backed off through Senna S, but I'll wait and see how he decides to play that. Everyone else is going quicker. Across the line will come Lucas Salles. And what can he do? Where can he move up to? Second quickest, 1:36.153. He's just under 0.3 off the top time set by Muller, who is not going quicker in sector 2, but he has gone faster in sector 1 on this lap. Fastest of all so far. Again, Comparato still 4th fastest. Mariotti 5th. Bassani's gone P6. 1:36.846. And Marcel Muller lost time in the final sector. So he only goes to 1:36.4, but stays fastest. Vivacqua comes across the line with his final effort and goes to 4th. And Leonardo Herman has done a P9. And again, I can confirm Miguel Paludo, the defending Carrera Cup champion, does not make it out for qualifying. He's denied exiting pit lane, and he will not set a time because the session is now over. So that's the turn up for the books. Miguel Paludo, no time, and he will have to start from P10. It's not the worst result in the world. He could be starting 37th. But P10, particularly when you're one of the fastest guys and you're the defending champion, not exactly where you want to be. So impressive stuff from all those top times coming in. And the top times that were coming in as the celebrations again for the Marcel Muller's squad. A lot of drivers were in the 1:36s. Herman could only do a 1:37.1. But in the end, it was Marcel Muller who scores the first Porsche Carrera Cup Brasil pole position of the season, a 1:35.868. The only man to lap in the 1:35s all session in this qualifying. And he is quickest by almost 0.3 of a second from Lucas Salles in second fastest. Seba Malicelli, who is by far the best sport class car, in third quickest. Thiago Vivacqua, 4th fastest ahead of Matheus Comparato. Then Miguel Mariotti, Jeff Giassi, and Tena Bassani in 8th fastest. Then Leonardo Herman. And no time for Miguel Paludo. That's another big talking point from the session. One of the biggest talking points. And impressive stuff for Malicelli, who, again, puts a sport class car onto the second row of the grid for race number 1 of the season. So Marcel Muller so far then, fastest in practice, fastest in the Cup segment of this first part of qualifying, and then an absolutely storming lap to put himself fastest overall and on pole position in the top 10 shootout. And there's the man himself, the bright yellow and black machine, and they're getting the waves and the thumbs up to confirm you've done it, Marcel. You are fastest. It is pole position for you, pole number 1 of the year. And he will climb out. He would have been told that on the radio. Handshakes, hugs, all the usual celebrations. He looks pretty relaxed, but pretty happy at the same time. P1. Marcel Muller, currently the man to beat. And the question you also have to ask is, what could, if anything, Miguel Paludo have done had he been allowed to set a time in the session? But it looks to me as if he simply missed the cut. He simply missed the cut, didn't get out quick enough, and was held at the end of the time. There's thumbs up also, a very happy Seba Malicelli. Not only the fastest sport class car, but also 3rd fastest. Really impressive stuff from Seba. And he will certainly want to try and replicate that form later on in the race. Seba Malicelli from Sao Paulo. He was promoted up from Challenge in 2024. And incredibly, he began racing in indoor karting. So that's a place to start. And of course, he's also a qualified lawyer on top of that too. But there's certainly quite the challenge for Malicelli and getting up there as high in the order as possible. So we'll quickly confirm the top 10 before we go into the next part of our qualifying program, which is now Carrera Cup is finished. We move into the Porsche Sprint Challenge, which all the cars in that championship use the 991 generation Porsche Cup car, the previous generation car. So slightly smaller engine, 3.8 litres compared to the 4 litres that you find in a 992. A little bit less horsepower, 450 compared to the 460 that you find in the Carrera Cup class cars. There's some good competition here, I'd imagine. Some good racing, I'm sure, what's going to be in store for everyone involved. So in challenge, once that gets out, as we look at our highlights from our top 10 shootout, and I'll quickly confirm the top 10 again from qualifying. There is your pole sitter for the first time in 2026. The first pole of the year in Carrera Cup Brazil goes to that man right there. It is Marcel Muller, who's fastest. The timing screen's already gone to reset to go for our first part of qualifying for Sprint Challenge. But Marcel Muller definitely happy with his efforts. And again, Seba Malicelli should be very pleased with that. And we should also mention, too, the fact that Pipo Massa is your fastest rookie on his first qualifying session, his first weekend in the championship. And he is the best of the new drivers. And certainly doing his father, Felipe, proud. Of course, Pipo, the son of Felipe Massa, former F1 driver with Sauber, with Ferrari, and with Williams. And he's also raced all sorts of things. He did World Touring Cars at one point. He did also, I think, Formula E for a couple of rounds, and has also been doing Stock Car Brazil in more recent times. But that will be in Carrera Cup, whereas we now move on to our slightly older Porsche cars for the Sprint Challenge, and the 991s with the 3.8 litre engine are out first of all. So our first part of the Sprint Challenge qualifying, we'll see the rookies out first. I think there are 5 classes out in this one, and the first class of which going out, it's Challenge Rookie. So we've got a few of our drivers heading out here to go as hard as they dare. And it is number 91 on screen. I was having a scroll through my spotters guide very quickly to find who we're talking about. Yeah, Challenge Rookie, that was Dilson Perez Jr. So the Challenge Rookie cars right here. It was 3 classes in the same fashion as Carrera Cup. So you have Challenge Rookie, you have Challenge Sport, and the main Challenge class. There are 5 cars in that category. 6 in Sport, and there are a total of 10 in the Rookie class. So 10 rookies competing this year. Very strong rookie field, as you can see. Also see on the screen there is number 18, which is Ricardo Zilberman. Ricardo, who has been racing Porsche since late 2023, is moving up to Challenge from the Trophy class. So it's his first time in the Challenge Cup, hence being one of the rookies in the field. And this qualifying will follow the same format as it did before for the Carrera Cup. So you'll have the 3 categories going out to qualify separately. Then you'll have an overall top 10 at the end of that. And the top 10 will then go through to their shootout, respectively, to find out who will take the first Sprint Challenge pole of the season. So out on track now, and looking on screen, you can find is car number 7. Car 7. Which is not a car I have in my spotter's guide, strangely enough. It's car 7, but the spotter's guide had it as car 10. So it's car 7, which is Adriano Valverde. Adriano Let's try and set a quick time. Into Laranjinha and then Pinheirinho, and the climb back up the hill towards Bico de Pato. And back down the gears again. Wonderfully technical circuit is Interlagos. And what's great about the Porsche Cup cars is that the 991s get some extra competition life. Of course, these 991 cars, for a long time in their generation, when it was the up-to-date generation, were the cars that everyone had. But of course, the older generation cars do still get a competition life. They don't just get mothballed and pushed into garages or workshops and not used anywhere else. Typically, these cars, the challenge cars or Carrera Cup cars, are probably one of the most versatile factory-built race cars that you can use, because you can put it into any GT competition, any sports car competition that's quite open. But the fact that Porsche keep these cars in service for drivers that might not be able to have the budget for a full Carrera Cup season, Sprint Challenge is more manageable. These older cars are slightly more cost-effective. And it means then that they can also get a stepping stone into the championship as well. There's also the trophy class on top of that too, which we only have Sprint Challenge and the Carrera Cup here this season. But the 991 is a great starting point. Little less horsepower than the Carrera Cup cars. It means that they get an entry point into the championship, and just shows why this championship is as popular as it is. Looking at Rafael Bernardes in car number 100. And two more of our rookies in the field there too. Looking at car number 11, which is Emilio Moreira, and also running parallel with the 222, which is Eldo Umbelino. And we'll look at the times coming in to see who is doing where at the moment. And fastest of the, not true representative times, but top of the times already from a driver that's set a more than one lap so far, is Charles Grunberg in number 4. And the 777 of Marcelo Bentivoglio is second quickest, from Eldo Umbelino in 3rd. Rafael Bernardes and Adriano Valverde in P5. 6th quickest for Claudio Simão. Also Dilson Perez Jr. I believe, looking at my research when I was doing some notes to look up on some of the rookies, is an entrepreneur, a lawyer, and a mentor. He's got quite a built-up social media profile. Lots of info on how to do well in business or legal matters, but he's now just building himself up a little more to also go racing. There was some signs that he quite likes Porsches, and so he's now decided, it seems, if it is him, to go Porsche racing. What I could make out on the research I was able to do. Just behind him on track is Ricardo Zilberman in the blue and white car. You see Perez Jr. is in the dark blue and orange number 91 just in front, just coming through the front of the shot there. Here comes number 4. Porsche number 4, which is not a car I have on my... I do have it on my screen, but again, my sponsor car had it as number 3. It's actually car number 4. So a difference in colours for them. Grunberg comes across the line and has set still the best time of the session so far, 1:42.679. Umbelino has gone to 2nd. Marcel Bentivoglio currently 3rd fastest. Emilio Moreira comes across the line and doesn't improve much. Goes up to 9th, but only 1 spot from the 10 cars that are out on track. Looking at Dilson Perez and the 18 of Ricardo Zilberman. They're on track together. So Zilberman getting a free tow from Dilson Perez Jr. as the interested parties look on in the pit lane. What a magnificent haircut. Can't say I've seen a hairstyle like that before, but therefore you've seen it all. So, Zilberman with a slightly tighter run through the final couple of corners as they keep foot to the floor. All 450 horsepower going down to the ground in these Porsche 991 Cup cars. And it's Adriano Valverde who's gone fastest now, 1:42.063. He's cleared by 0.6 of a second from the rookies. So good effort from Adriano. The 777, which is Bentivoglio. He is almost a second off the current fastest time. Bentivoglio is going quicker in sector 2, not matching sector 1. And he goes third fastest, 1:42.448. So we found time in sectors 2 and 3. He needs to better sector 1 because he was off by about, I'd say, 0.4. You can find a bit more pace in sector 1. You can be a little higher up there and closer. Claudio Simão in the 58 has gone second quickest, 1:42.250. It's nearly 0.2 off of Valverde. And Umberlino, who I noticed was going purple in at least sector 1, has also set personal bests in 2 and 3. And he now dips into the 141s, 141.714. And there is Umberlino, the 222, in the golden turquoise machine, sponsored by KTR Group. Charging his way down the Reto Aposta, using all the track on the exit. There is Rafael Bernardes. Personal best in sector 1, a decent sector 2, but off by about a couple of tenths off the best time. As Umberlino goes faster again in sector 1, fastest of the session so far. Also a personal best, fastest sector 2 for Claudio Simão. Bernardes improves his time but stays in P5. But the two cars we have to watch, I'm certain, are going to be Umberlino in the 222, who's going faster again, and Claudio Simão, who I'm looking on screen right now. So this is Claudio going through Subida dos Boxes, flat out through 14 and 15. Third fastest, personal best sector 1, fastest sector 2 of the session. Can he improve on a 42.2? The answer is yes, he can, by 0.4 of a second. Claudio Simão goes to top of the times in rookie, 1:41.303. A cracking lap. And Bentivoglio also popped in almost immediately afterwards with a 1:41.380. So 77 thousandths of a second separate the top two in the times. Simão and Bentivoglio, with their last laps that they just put in, they still have time to do one more. There's a minute left in the session. Now, Umberlino has done a fastest first sector of anybody. He was off the pace in sector 2. He won't go back much quicker. If he is winding himself up for one more lap, this will have to be it. And through the gears in that sequential box, paddle shift. And then back through the ZRS. Through 14 and 15 comes Adriano Valverde, who is, again, fastest first sector of anybody. Again, off the pace in sector 2. Across the line he goes, and goes up to 4th. He lost too much time in sectors 2 and 3. Whether or not the white Porsche behind was Emilia Moreira was anything to do with that remains to be seen. Here comes the 58. Claudio Simão. Personal best in sector 1. Personal best in sector 2. Not the absolute fastest, but I have seen people take pole position or go quicker with personal best. You don't necessarily have to have that in order to be able to manage it. Here goes Simão. Across the line he goes. Trying to improve his time. Does improve his time, in fact. Didn't need the fastest sectors out of anybody, but improves his time overall by 0.2. So 1:41.129, and Bentivoglio was only a 1:41.160. So the gap is even closer in the rookie category. It's now 31 thousandths of a second between the top two. Simão and Bentivoglio, top of the times. The checker flag has gone out. It is personal best for sector 1 for Bernardes in P3. This is now Umberlino coming through, but he is not going quicker in either sector, so he shouldn't improve and won't, I don't believe, but it's still very close, in fact. In fact, the gap between 4th, 5th, and 6th is 65 thousandths of a second, or even closer than that, in fact. Less than a tenth between 4th, 5th, and 6th. And Valverde is not going to improve either, because he is on a... Well, sector 2, he's on a personal best. And we've seen that Simão can go quicker. Valverde could get himself up a spot or two higher if he can go much quicker. No, he can't. P5 for Valverde. Wilson Perez Jr. is P6. And Rafael Bernardes, who's done personal best in sector 1, an okay sector 2, and doesn't improve at all. He stays 3rd quickest. So no change for Bernardes. Umberlino still 4th, Valverde 5th. but it is Claudio Simão, who didn't need the fastest sector of any sectors on this lap, but it was personal best in all three that gives him the top time. And interestingly, neither did second place quickest Marcel Bentivoglio, because he set personal best in sectors 1 and 2 on his best lap, but didn't go much quicker either. In fact, he didn't set the fastest sectors of anyone. In fact, it was the 3rd, 4th, and 5th that all claimed the fastest sector of the session each. Bernardes was quickest in sector 2 of everyone. It was a 2 drivers, in fact, because Valverde was also 6th quickest, 5th quickest, in fact. He was best in sector 1 and 2. 1 and 3, I should say, on that one. So he was much quicker on that side. So that is the end of the Sprint Challenge rookie session. The sports session's coming up next for that second part of the qualifying. Let's quickly recap at the top 10 from where they finished in that session. So Claudio Simão, with his best time of the session, was a 1:41.129. That puts him fastest of the rookies from Marcelo Bentivoglio in second quickest. Rafael Bernardes, 3rd fastest. Eldo Umbelino, 4th quickest, and Adriano Valverde in P5. And then Dilson Perez Jr., Charles Grunberg, Ricardo Zilberman, Lucas Castellani, and Emilio Moreira round out the top 10 in the rookie class. As we see the highlights or quick slow-mos of the top 10 from our rookie category, moving to sports. I'm pleased to say that I'm now not alone in the commentary box, because a voice you'd be very familiar with from Porsche Cup Brasil coverage for the English commentary is back here, because he's hot-footed over from the other commitments, but he is here now to join me for the rest of the session. I can fill him in on what happened in Carrera Cup. I'm very pleased to welcome for the first time for this season on the English FIFA 2026, the one and only Mr. Jake Sanson. Jake, I can't remember what the hello is for in Portuguese, but I'll say hello anyway.
It's hola.
Interesting.
It's hola. Nice and simple.
Hola. Of course, take the H off and it's much better. This is going to be fun. So 2 sessions to go. First of all, let's fill you in on what happened with Carrera Cup. It was pole position for Marcel Muller after he was fastest in practice and the top 10 session. But I will give you one piece of key information. Forgive me whilst I fill in Jake here for a second whilst he comes in. And those of you who were also watching from earlier on who missed it, the fastest time went to Marcel Muller, but the defending champion which was Miguel Paludo. He was held at the end of the pit lane and wasn't allowed to set a time. I suspect because he was too late getting out into the session. So he didn't set a time, did get to the top 10 shootout, but will have to start back in 10th. So he will be top of the Carrera Cups for pole position for race number 1 later on. Seba Malicelli was fast to the sport category and 3rd quickest overall. Really good effort for him. And you should be pleased to also know that in the rookie category, there was a certain son of a Ferrari Formula 1 driver that was quickest in that category. Pipo Massa fastest of the rookies. They'll start roughly right about mid-pack as well. So interesting Carrera Cup session. We've also just seen as well, as we said, its fastest session in the rookie category for Claudio Simão in the Sprint Challenge rookies from Marcelo Bentivoglio and Rafael Bernardes. One thing to also mention is that how close the times have really been. I mean, Marcel's time was about 2 tenths quicker than anybody else, but it was then everyone else behind that was quite close. But the fact, for example, in qualifying for Carrera Cup and also a Sprint Challenge as well, similarly, top 14 in practice this morning for Carrera Cup was separated by less than a second. And there's 78 drivers competing this weekend across the 2 categories. That just certainly proves that the Porsche Carrera Cup Brasil, as it has been for the last 20 years, but particularly this year, it seems, is in very, very rude health indeed.
It certainly is. It's great to see that Porsche Brasil is still really blossoming. Last year was the 20th anniversary championship, of course. And for those who are joining for the first time or just want to refresh you from last time out anyway, it was such a fantastic season. I mean, Marcel Muller coming out of the blocks to get pole position today is such a statement of intent after last year, arguably, 2025 was his year in terms of raw pace. He could easily have won the Porsche Carrera Cup Brasil itself, as well as the endurance title. He, of course, won the endurance title at Alcântara. Did a fantastic job to do so with winning both the races at Estoril and Portimao, and then coming through for some points in a strong position enough at Interlagos in November to win the title. But he should easily have won the Carrera Cup Brasil itself, of course. Don't forget, last year, he was leading race 1 at Velocida in round 1 when he got a puncture. Then in round 2, he led race 1 and got a puncture. Then at Interlagos at round 3, he led race 1 and incredibly, he got a puncture again. His entire season was wiped out in 3 weekends from the lead with 3 consecutive punctures in as many rounds. Without those, Marcel Moller would absolutely have dominated 2025. So for 2026, it's a statement of intent as he wants to win the title again, quite clearly. So it'll be fascinating. Now, we've got the drivers from both Sport and Challenge out together because we've got a smaller capacity of grid than first anticipated. So the Sport and Challenge drivers have gone out together. That means we're going to have slightly less time out on track. But it does mean that the Sport and Challenge drivers will go out together en masse. So Daniel Newman, who is still going very strong after his run in the rookie category last year, now stepping up to Sport in the Challenge category. Will Cesar, Gerson Campos, who did such a good job last year, along with Caio Castro and Sadak Leiter, they all go into the Premier category now. So Daniel Newman, up from rookie, goes straight in at Challenge. That is great news for him. In the Sport category, we've got some new faces, including Gabriel Goubert and Pedro McDowell. And then we've also got Nicolas Garfinkel, Marco Mascari, Neto Hale, and then the last driver in is the very familiar Cecilia Rebelo, who of course won in F4 Brazil a couple of times in her 2024 campaign. Was coaxed into the championship, of course, by Antonella Bassani, who wanted a female co-driver in the endurance category in 2024. So she rang up Cecilia Rebello and said, look, I want a woman as a teammate. Would you come and have a go? She did one test session and said, yeah, I quite like these cars. I'll come and do it. And the rest is history. Now we've got Antonella Bassani questing for Carrera Cup title honours. And we've got Cecilia Rebello, who's actually a favourite going in for not just the Sport title, but maybe even for the Challenge title outright.
She took a class win at Portimao last year when she was competing. And also, she's already had some action this season already because she's competed once in the IMSA VP Challenge at Daytona last year as well.
Sorry, Scott. It looks like Pedro McDowell lost something from his rear wing.
That's extraordinary. I was looking at my notes, but
he hasn't even gone on to a proper flying lap, but something definitely parted company with Pedro McDowell's car as he came through the arquibancadas. So big problems already for Pedro McDowell. We barely even started this session.
Yeah, Pedro, who is more used to, from what my research notes, he's more used to being a rally UTV ultimate racer. So he's used to low grip. If that is going to affect his grip, he should be quite at home in that sense. Will Cesar is in the mix as well. He only started racing, looks like, back in 2024, racing in the Race Cup BR Championship, which is very much like a front-wheel drive kind of spec hot hatch championship. And then he was racing stock car lights last season, so he's quickly moving up the ranks between hot hatches to stock cars and now into Porsches. A distinctive machine as well, being in the 134 cyan and black machine. And looking where he's getting on the times as he comes across the line, he is currently, on my screen as it loads up, he is still third of the Sprint Challenge cars as he comes across the line. And out of all the cars in this session so far that are set times, Nicolas Garfinkel was quickest, and then second, I was about to say, was Cecilia Rebello, but it's now Caio Castro in the 22 machine. He just set a 141.292, and he goes up to third fastest. But now it's Sadak Leite in the 140.963. He goes top of the times in car 66. And Leite, who was Challenge Cars champion last year and has been racing in Porsche since 2022, certainly getting up to speed. But impressive stuff so far from these drivers who, in this 991 category, I was mentioning right at the beginning of the championship of this session, Jake, is that it's good that we keep these 991 cars in competition, extending the competition life, because I'd argue that the Carrera Cup car is one of the more versatile and long-standing factory-built race cars that you can use wherever it's permitted. The fact that Porsche Carrera Cup has decided they want to keep these older cars going, and it provides a more cost-effective entry point into Porsche racing in Brazil outside of the Carrera Cup. If you can't afford a full season, if you want to start a little bit lighter with the Sprint Challenge, it gives you that entry point, gives you the starting ground to do so. It's still like a very competitive field, and if you keep on progressing up the ranks through Trophy, through Challenge, then you're ready for Carrera Cup. But you get that grounding in these older cars before you step up to the 992. Of course, the budgets and the pace is a little more extreme.
Yeah, it's a really good incentive to get drivers into the sport for the first time. And these cars do still have great versatility, still great drivability. They're still great developers for racecraft. You can get a lot out of these cars. And we've seen time and time again drivers come through the Sprint Challenge over the last 3 or 4 seasons and then progress through not just to the main body championship, but then they go to GT3 racing on the whole around the continent, not just here in Brazil. They can go off to Europe and do bits and pieces. There is real genuine progression. There is real depth in this field, and these cars do give you such an incredible value for money because you buy the one car and you can race it almost every week. You know, you get used to these cars and you can pretty much go racing in the 911 pretty much everywhere around the globe, because there's so many different competitions where the car is eligible. There are many different competitions for this particular car, one make championship around the world. So you can race in Switzerland, you can race in the North European Championship, you can race in the Carrera Cup itself, on the Formula 1 bill if you want to. But there is so much you can do in the GT scene as well. Getting these cars, they are just about the most user-friendly plug-in and play race car. You can jump into pretty much anything. You can go and race in the GT World Challenge. You can go and jump into the Chinese GT Championship, for an example. You can do anything you want with these cars. And it's fantastic that Porsche Brazil keeps giving big support. It's obviously they're going to want to support the Carrera Cup Brazil. Of course they will, because it's their premier category. But it's wonderful to see so much energy and so much effort still put into the Sprint Challenge. It really does give people from this part of the world great grounding, a great development. Right, we've got the oil flags out now, Scott. That is obviously for that debris that is down at arquibancadas. Now, it's just off the racing line, so I don't think that's going to cause too much of a headache as Daniel Newman goes top on a 1:38.3 just in front of Geração Campos. Now, this is a great opportunity for Geração Campos this season. I really rate him as a potential champion. I think he's got what it takes this year. He had some flashes of brilliance in 2025, but there were just a couple of moments where it sort of fell through the net. I think he's got champion potential this year.
He's got quite a following as well, has Geração Campos. He's actually the co-owner and founder of Acelerados at Network Brazil, and he's got quite a following, over 220,000 followers on Instagram. So not only that, it's almost like he's very much well versed in the automotive world, but he's managed to put that to good use and actually using his abilities not just as an automotive person but as a race driver to really move forwards in his racing career. So that Leite coming forwards as well, but I think Geração certainly was one of the quickest drivers that we saw this morning in practice in the mix in the top 5.
Ooh. Later going out very wide there through the left-handers. That's gone very well. That's a lap that's wasted, unfortunately, for Sadek Leite. It's really not been... Qualifying has never really been his forte. I mean, okay, he's just gone second quickest, but he's much better in racecraft than he is in qualifying. He has a bit of a reputation of leaning something on the edge and throwing it to caution to the winds. He'll get it wrong in qualifying, and then he'll bounce back flamboyantly in racing. Watch for him later.
Interestingly enough, Cal Castro, who was quickest in practice this morning, only 4th fastest at the moment. It's Newman quickest from Leite second. If you watch Campos cross the line now and did not improve on 30, only just, and he missed out by a couple of tenths. So he can still find some time if he can find a bit more pace. He's got 2.5 minutes to go in the session. Leite will not improve on this time, I'm certain, but he hasn't, because he's off on sectors 1 and 2. But Daniel Newman still fastest by quite a margin. This is very much Marcel Muller-esque, where at one point Muller was 0.6 best of anyone else in his past the qualifying session. Newman performing just the same. And Newman this morning, if I remember where he was in practice this morning, he was in fact second quickest behind Castro. And then it was Marco Mascari. Cecilia Rebello was 4th quickest. And who we see on screen now, car number 98. And I think it's safe to say you can't miss Cecilia's car on the screen. It's particularly bright pink, but it's quite fitting. But she's pretty incredibly quick. And as you say, the point I was making earlier before we saw the part of the wing fly off Pedro McDowell's car was that she's already had some racing already this season so far, because she made the trip over to Daytona to go and compete in the opening round of the IMSA VP Challenge at the wheel of, I think, a Toyota Supra GT4. So plenty of real-world drive experience. Been over to Daytona, and before that she's done Formula Delta, 2 seasons of Formula F4 Brazil. And she comes across the line. It is Rebella coming across the line to put herself into fastest of the sport category cars. She's quickest of the category in P6, and she's into the top 10, of course, of the top 10 shootout. So Newman, Sadek, Leite, it's now Campos, in fact, up to second quickest now. 1:38.848, then Leite, Castro and Cesar, and then Rebello quickest of the sport cars from Garfinkel, Ascari, Heil and Segupa. And as I say that, Jake, Garfinkel up to P5 now. He's jumped up with Cesar and Rebello. So Finkel, with his pretty much last effort of the session, goes into P5 and fastest of that secondary category.
It's a good point you make, Scott. They don't really have to push that hard in this session. Just getting themselves into the top 10 will do. It's funny you mentioned Cecilia Rebello's car being pink. It always was, but I have a feeling over the winter she's looked at it and gone, how can I make this car more pink than it currently is? I mean, last year it was good. Oh, bit of a tack snapper there from McDowell. Manages to catch it, but yeah, Rebello's car was pink last year, but I wonder if she's gone back to the drawing board and think, no, you know what? We can go brighter, we can go bigger, we can go pinker, because it's certainly...
She's taking inspiration from Bassan to put some blue in there, because she's thinking, right, I want some of that to make it...
yes, it's kind of pink and blue Minecraft, isn't it, the way it's kind of evolved?
A little bit, yeah.
It looks very flamboyant.
Her car is more blue and white with some pink flashes, whereas Red's gone the full fluorescent pink, which I don't blame her, of course. So that's what you want to do, and they wanted to see McDowell get a tail out on these Porsches. Usually the traction on these cars is quite good, but if you push them too hard like that, with number 19 doing the rotation, which is 15 in fact, which is Marco Mascari, third of the sport category cars, then they do tend to go around pretty quickly, even though all the weight is on the back end of that car.
Well, that was well timed. I mean, you were literally talking about pushing it too hard, and then Marco Mascari obliged for you. Fortunately, he got away with it.
I don't think the directors can understand the English, but they seem to be either in sync or just listening something. Or this.
You'd be surprised.
You'd be surprised, possibly so.
The team are very good here. The team are very, very strong. They're on the ball.
I don't deny that, because I'm always impressed, as it was for Stock Car Brazil, by the drone shots that they get, particularly the drone shots. They've already had one wandering down the pit lane going sideways with the excellent aerial view that you get of all the cars down there. Excellent to see.
You'll get some of that in Porsche Brazil, don't you worry. I have a feeling they taught a few other people a few tricks in the Porsche Brazil paddock. So the 10 that are going to go through then to the shootout, quite predictably, Newman and Campos, Leiter and Castro, Garfinkel and Cesar, Rebello, Mascari, Nacho Hale, and Gabriel Guper. You got to feel for Claudio Shimiao, who was rather hoping he could break into the top 10 a few times in 2026. Certainly got quite close to it last year, but there's time. There's still opportunities for him to do that, certainly as the calendar continues to progress, because we've got a very busy season this year. There's always something new to add to the quality of the calendar in Porsche Brazil. Last year, of course, we celebrated the 20th anniversary, and so we had a fantastic calendar that also, of course, took in the Grand Prix weekend, which we'll do again this year. But the full calendar this season is going to be quite a busy one, and it even takes in, get this, Le Mans. Oh, yes, we get to go to Le Mans in the beautiful month of June. That is very special indeed, because the drivers have all wanted to, and being part of that weekend is quite a special honour. And it's only by invitation that you get the opportunity to do that on the Le Mans weekend. So that's a big call-up. And it shows you just how serious the racing is and how exciting the racing is, of course, in Porsche Cup Brazil, because you don't get to go to Le Mans on the 24-hour weekend as a support race unless you are high pedigree. So we've got Interlagos, obviously, this weekend. At the end of the month, we go to Velocita, which is spelt action. Then Goiânia. It's great to go back to Goiânia. It's been a couple of years since we've gone to the Autódromo Ayrton Senna, so it'll be great to go back there again. I'm not entirely sure yet if we're using the oval configuration or the full Grand Prix configuration. I would have probably guessed the latter. Then Le Mans in June, and then on the first weekend of July, we've got the first of our trips to Portugal. We think at the moment it is going to be Portimao, but it hasn't been confirmed yet. And it's certainly going to be a nice little wrestling match, of course, as it always is between Portimao and Estoril. In previous years, we've gone to both, but we only have time in the category calendar this year to go to one. So that'll be announced in due course as to which of the Portuguese circuits it's going to be. Then a week later, we'll have the first of our 3 endurance races. Then the sprint at Interlagos back again on the first weekend of September. Then the second endurance race is at Goiânia. So not only are we going there this year, but we're going there for sprint and endurance. So that is going to be one hell of an event. Then we'll have the Grand Prix weekend, which sadly only Portuguese-speaking viewers will be able to catch a glimpse of. We'll have to take a weekend off for that. And then we go back for the 28th of November, the big one, the 500 kilometers of Interlagos, the season finale of the endurance category. And that's where all drivers in Carrera Challenge and Trophy get the chance to go onto the circuit for 500 kilometers, which of course, in these cars, will take a good 4.5 hours. It's great racing.
And just to confirm with the Carrera Cup Brazil going to the one, is it just Carrera Cup Brazil, or are there other championships joining them? Is it just the Brazilian championships?
as far as I'm aware, it's only been announced that it's the Carrera Cup Brasil, but I don't know if that's officially confirmed yet. I would say stay tuned on that one. If you're fans of Porsche Cup Brasil and fans of Le Mans, which if you're watching is a guarantee, then stay tuned because more announcements are coming in the weeks to come. But with the championship happening so early for a kickoff this year, I'm trying to remember the last time the Porsche Cup Brasil actually started technically in February, and I think it's quite a few years actually. So this is the earliest it started in quite some time. So could be very interesting to see how things all continue to progress over the course of the year, but certainly a perfect way to start. And if Carrera Cup is going to be as good as qualifying was, then get yourself a decent seat, but you'll only need the edge of it later on.
I'll keep myself on it just in case. Now I think I'd like to think that the Sprint Challenge drivers in the top 10 will have learned the lesson that Pedro didn't learn in qualifying earlier on, because that's, I can only imagine that he was a little bit quicker. So Miguel Paludo, forgive me, didn't learn, because as far as I could tell, Miguel Paludo was late into the queues. Therefore, he was held at the end of the pit lane for the entire session, did not set a time, was not let out, and the other 9 cars went out and set time. So I imagine, I can only assume that there's a time limit or a restriction that you have to be at into the pit lane and get out within a certain time period. Otherwise, you will not be allowed out in the session. So I'd like to think, if that's the case, that the 10 drivers that are going to be out in this top 10 shootout have seen that and thought, I best get my skates on and make sure I'm ready to go. Of course, some of these cars will literally just be fresh, literally coming off track from their respective session, one of which is Cal Collette, who is waiting to be let loose to the end of the pit lane. Cal Castro, different Brazilian driver, just a different area. But Cal Castro, and Cal himself, who, his experience so far, amongst being a racer in Porsche since 2021, he's raced Formula V and Super Truck. One thing I also found out, Jake, he's an award-winning actor and a model. So he gets around quite a bit doing all sorts, does Cal Castro, and quite a good actor at that. So he seems to be a bit like the, you'll get this, like the Michael Fassbender of Brazil, I guess, in that sense.
Yes, indeed.
Well,
like it's ironic considering that Michael Fassbender was with us at the final round of the championship last season. So he actually drove in the 500 kilometers. So I have a feeling they had a few stories to share with each other.
Possibly. Other Porsche racing actors are available. I think of Patrick Dempsey, amongst others, in that sense. So some highlights of the combined session for the Sport and Sprint Challenge cars from that session. Of course, quickest of that was Daniel Newman in car 21. Second quickest in practice this morning, moving up to fastest, and Cal Castro, who, as Jake rightly said, don't have to go fastest, but it does give you a bit of a marker to get through, at least get your bank. It's like in Formula 1, if you can make it into the top 10 in qualifying, yes, be as fast as you can in Q2 to get to Q3, but ultimately you can just get through. You can save your tyres a little bit and possibly at least give yourself a bit more pace to run in that shorter part of the session. So just waiting for things to get going again. Any bets on who might take quickest here? Castro, of course, quickest in practice. Newman fastest here. The circuit's drier than it was this morning because there was some saturation, some rain around. We had some patchiness on the circuit, which has dried up over the course of the day. Now it's been a bit sunnier and warmer. But any thoughts on who possibly has the pace here to take pole position?
Going for the outright pole at Interlagos, given how close it's been over the practice sessions. Going for the earlier runs. Lete. I'm gonna throw caution to the winds. I'm gonna say Sadek later might be able to push this just to that little ragged edge. You've got to remember that on this circuit, with these drivers in challenge, you're playing with hundredths of a second for pole position. You're not playing with tenths. It's going to be so tight. And we know that Daniel Newman is going to be out for the ultimate glory. But Sadek later just has this unnerving ability to find magic when you're not expecting it. And I would be quite scared if I were a couple of the other drivers out there looking at those final couple of sector times he pulled out when he didn't need to. You know, he was there to play, even though he was off the pace with his final flying lap. He's proven he's got what it takes to go for pole. It wouldn't shock me if Castro can come up with the goods, though, because obviously he's been consistently in the top 3 pretty much since June last year in this category. He knows exactly how to get the best out of himself now. But the man who is famous in Portuguese television and Brazilian television for playing Dom Pedro I himself in the very famous Novo Mundo out here in Brazil. Sorry, he's got a potential. This is a year where he really wants to showcase that he's not just a nearly man. He wants to be a champion. But then Cecilia Rebello, if she can pull out the goods and come up with some victories, not just in sport, but in the overall top 3 as well, it will not be too long before the funding comes along for her to step up to the Carrera Cup in 2027. And then we would have 2 ladies in the Carrera Cup. And it really is starting to look like more than just a possibility now. It's looking like a pipe dream turned to a fairy tale, because Cecilia is really gaining confidence in stature and in depth and breadth. She always used to say in single-seaters, she felt like she was quick, but she always felt like she had to try harder than she was willing to. She had to bring more out of herself. With the Porsche, she can be comfortable behind the wheel. She can really find her niche. And this is where she's got that real tenacity, that ability. The excitement factor of possibly having Bassani and Rebello going for victories in Porsche Brazil on a regular basis in 2026 is really quite exciting. This could be a year where we get 2 female champions, and that's quite an extraordinary stat if that happens.
It'd be quite a grudge match as well, watching the 2 of them battle together. That would be quite fun to watch, those 2 battling on track. Of course, I'm sure if they team up again in the endurance leagues, that could be even quite a combo itself. One thing I did notice, how significant it might be or not, is that Daniel Newman, I just saw there, the piece of bodywork that came off Pedro McDowell's car in that part of the session. Unless my eyes deceived me, I think Daniel Newman ran over it. Now how much that's going to affect him or not, I don't know, but we'll have to wait and see how that session plays out. My tip for pole was actually going to be Gershon Campos. If you were plumping for the 80, I was going to pick Campos.
Yeah.
Then it might well be that neither of them get it. He said they'd be Cal Castro or Daniel
Could
Newman.
be Newman. You watch Daniel Newman now.
We both look like fools, which we are anyway, but that's the matter entirely. So,
you watch. Newman's going to make us both look like absolute numpties. Oh, dear. That's a word that our Brazilian fans don't know yet, but we'll educate them through the season, I'm sure.
Yeah, there's plenty. Right, less than 7 minutes to go. Not a fast lap. We haven't started yet. We've still got 2 more races. Or 4 races, in fact, with Sprint Challenge and Carrera Cup. But anyway, the 10 that are in the session, to remind you, Daniel Newman, Cecilia Rebello, Gershon Campos, Nicholas Garfinkel, who was fastest of the Sport Cup class cars in this category in qualifying earlier on in the session. Will Cesar, Neto Heil, Cal Castro, Gabriel Goupert, Marco Mascari, and Sedak Leite are out there to see what they can do to pick up the fastest time possible. There'll be some initial banker times coming in. First time on the board goes to Newman, 141.890, better by Cecilia Rebello, 141.6 for Cecilia. Let's see if they can improve. A couple of these first times will be banker lap times. They won't be exactly proper full pace, though. Having said that, Garfinkel will just go quicker than Rebello. And I imagine Newman either wasn't at full stretch, or if he was an interrupted lap. But there is Newman. Keeping eyes on the sector times. If they show on the sector times being green, it's a personal best. If it's purple, fast to the session. Newman makes his way out of Decido de Largo, up the hill towards the second half of this circuit. We had that very fast flowing part down towards the uphill stretch of Ferradura into Laranjinha. Then Megulo, Megulo's a couple of corners later. It's Pinheirinho next after Biga de Pato. So through Laranjinha, through Pinheirinho. Climb back up the hill again. And how is he looking in sector 1?
One driver who's not going to be getting the pole position, rather sadly, is Neto Hale. He's just been given a penalty, unfortunately, for going too fast out of the pit lane. So he didn't hit his limiter, so he's been penalised. So I have a feeling that Neto Hale is only going to be 10th fastest. That's a shame.
That would certainly make sense. On the move now, Sedat Leite. That's your bet for pole, 139.565. He goes quickest on his first proper lap. That's a real banker for him straight away. And Newman is fastest in sectors 1 and 2 and looking to try and snatch that pole time. Quickest in his part of qualifying, up towards the line. Well, Newman put himself. He certainly might be pole, but by how much? The answer is... Oh, quite a margin. 138.418. That's over a second quicken. 1.1 seconds faster. 138.148. Surely, unless anyone can get any closer than that, surely that's not going to be beaten.
Well, looking at the times that he's set in practice, I mean, he's really been building up to that lap. That's astonishing, even for Daniel Newman. And we know how quick he can be. But that is absolutely phenomenal pace.
And Gershon Campos is second quickest, so 138.724. So he's gotten close as Leite just locked up and went too wide. That was 66. That was, in fact, Leite went too deep into Laranjinha and just lost traction and couldn't anchor it up until he did, but he lost too much time and ran wide. Out through Junsao comes Marco Mascari. And in the sport category, we should say that Garfinkel is quickest from Cecilia Rebello. And Cecilia is only a fraction under 2/10 off. And she is going quicker on this lap, but not as quick as Garfinkel is. Because Garfinkel in sector 1 was a 10th quicker. Cross the line goes Mascari. And stays 10th, doesn't improve. Does a personal best, but doesn't move up the time. Needs to find at least 8 more hundredths to at least get himself into what will be eventually, well, he's 9th anyway, technically, because Heil has that penalty, so he will move up a spot anyway if he stays where he is in 10th. Campos is not going quicker. No personal best for him, sectors 1 and 2. 3 minutes to go in the session. And no one going faster yet. There's personal best coming in, sectors 1 for Leite and for Garfinkel, for Rebello and for Heil, but no one yet going much faster. But so far, a 3/10 clear gap for Newman, Jake, and Campos, as hard as he's trying, not going quicker yet, but he still has more time, still has 2 3/4 minutes to go to improve. But it's got lots of effort to try and put in here to try and get the 3/10 back. And as you say, this is a championship where, you know, finding this is more about finding hundredths rather than tenths. If you can find hundredths, then you're good. If you can find tenths in this championship, you're exceptional. And I think Jake has disappeared, unfortunately, so we'll continue on with the rest of the session. I'm sure he'll jump back in if he said, there he is. He's jumped back in, and he'll be connecting in a second time. Small glitch, but with 2 minutes to go. Still Campos, who is continuing on at top. It's personal best now again for Daniel Newman, as we see a replay of Nito Heil add into his woes in the session. Not only has he had a penalty, he's now had a spin out of Bigger de Pato and neatly parks it onto the grass in the inside of the exit of the corner. But I was mentioning before Jake briefly disappeared, is that Campos, if he wants to get himself here, he's got time to do it, 1 3/4 minutes. But this is a championship where, as you mentioned, because the margins are so fine in this championship, so competitive, if you can find tenths, you're very good. If you can find I'll start again. If you can find hundredths, you're good. If you can find tenths in this championship, you're exceptional.
Sadek Leite has just found a couple of more tenths. He's now 6/10 of a second back from Newman. But that 1:38.4, I mean, that's just monstrous for the first qualifying session of the season here at Interlagos. That's real pace. You can see just how physical Will Cesar is getting on the brakes now to really try and work his way further forward. That car was almost listing as he came into Jinkao, really putting a lot of pressure on himself to move forward. Nicholas Garfinkel, the fastest of the sport drivers, then Rebello from Mascari, Goubert, and then of course Neto Hale. Any changes across the line for Will Cesar? 4th position, not as quick a lap, a 1:39.5 that time. So only about a 1/10 of a second away from what we know he's capable of. I'm surprised that Caio Castro hasn't found his best lap yet. Mind you, this could be it. Just done a 37.9 and then a 31.6. So this could put him up into, well, I would only actually say 4th. I don't quite think he's got the legs on later, unless he's found something pretty spectacular in the middle sector. We'll see what he gets as he comes across the line. Is it good enough for 4th position even? No, it's not. 1:39.5. I'm surprised that Castro just hasn't found the lap together yet.
And in fact, if I look at the times, in fact, he's still about a 10th off or so. Leite has not gone quicker either. I should say also in the sport category, Garfinkel and Rebello are the class of the field there, because if you look at where they are, their times, 1:39.649, 1:39.744, only a 10th of a second. The next best car in the field in that category is 6/10 back, which is Marco Mascari. So that's certainly going to be troubles barring for either of them. Garfinkel versus Rebello for the Challenge Sport class victory, I'm certain. It'd just be a case of which one of them could get in front off the start and actually get a better run from their top 10 position, of course, because they'll be on different rows at the moment. It'll be 6th and the 3rd row for Garfinkel, 4th row for Rebello. If she can get a better start from the other side, it could be a good chance to do so. Checker flag is out on the session, and the only person trying to improve is Castro. He has done a personal best in sector 1, so maybe he could move up a little high. He's only going to find another 10th and a bit to go ahead of Will Cesar, who is going to abort this lap anyway. There is no one else going quicker on a lap, so Daniel Newman comes in and accepts he is on pole position by that extraordinary time of almost over a 1/4 second. But the person we think we need to watch for, because they're on that final flying lap, is Caio Castro. He is on a personal best in sector 1. Whether he's backed off or not, we'll see with his time in sector 2. just yet.
Fourth, he's done it. He's made an improvement. He's beaten Chazar, but he still hasn't quite found enough to get on terms with Leite. So fourth position will have to do for Caio Castro as Daniel Newman gets out of the car. Pole? Really? Are you sure? Of course you are, mate. With a lap time of 1:38.4. Did you ever think anything else was going to happen? Goodness me. He's such a humble guy, is Dan Newman.
He seems genuinely surprised. Doesn't he realise, me, pole position, really?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Fabulous start to the season from a young guy who's still really getting into life as a Porsche driver. He made a fantastic debut in Challenge last year, really smooth as a rookie, genuinely looked like he had outright pace for the top 5 at times. But with so many drivers, of course, stepping up now into the Carrera Cup, it's pretty much his playground if he keeps this up. He's got plenty of tenacity, but he does all his talking on the circuit. He's very, very calm, very, very quiet, mild-mannered, never particularly egotistical, just gets on with it. He is the perfect complete racer.
And if you look at some of he's already one of those drivers who already has had some experience in a Porsche already this year, because only just a couple of weeks ago he was over in Portimao racing in the 6 hours, teaming up with Sergio Romano and Josimar Jr. as well, and finished P10 in class, which is quite impressive for them. And before that, he was, of course, race rookie last year, and he's been a former karting champion back in 2024. So only again, in his infancy in his career, but still looking pretty strong in this sprint challenge, and certainly starting off as he means to continue in the championship. So he is on provisional pole position then for the first race of the season in Porsche Sprint Challenge Brazil. He's quickest in the session from Gershon Campos, who's on the front row of the grid. From Cedet Leite, Caio Castro, who is fastest in practice, is 4th. Then Will Cesar in P5. And then he'll be alongside the top sport class car of Nicholas Garfinkel, Michele Rebello from Marco Mascari, Gabriel Guper, and Nito Heil, who has that spinning qualifying, but also that penalty that he received earlier on as well. Impressive stuff all around, Jake. What do you rate from the session from what you saw of it? But of course, it's poles for Master for Muller and for Gerso and Daniel Newman, respectively. This should be quite an intriguing first couple of races coming up later on this afternoon.
Certainly should. Perfectly good start to the season then in Porsche Cup Brazil. It's the 21st season, and we're going to get plenty of drama in both Carrera Cup and in the Sprint Challenge as well. It's been great to see how the first weekend could play out, but there's still plenty more to come from Porsche Carrera Cup and Sprint Challenge Brazil. Stick around, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. We're going to have plenty to do over the course of the next couple of hours. We've got more coming from Carrera Cup Brazil and Sprint Challenge later this afternoon.